Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Hey, it's Jonathan Goldhill, and welcome back to another episode of the Disruptive Successor Show. Today is going to be another solo podcast where I'm going to be talking about meetings that matter, meetings that you need to have in your business. In prior episodes on this podcast, I've talked about the boards of director and the family council, and I laid out the agendas for the family council meeting, and I discussed why and when you might have a board of directors meeting. In a future upcoming episode, I'll talk about the board of directors meeting and the structure for the agenda of that meeting. But in today's recording, I'm going to be talking about the work that I do with most of my clients. I should say all of my clients, that is if they have leadership teams. And that work is in the area of what Verne Harnish calls execution, or the discipline of execution. And execution discipline is around meetings that matter, meetings that include metrics, measures that matter, and meetings that include priorities that matter. And so the different types of meetings that I'm going to talk about in this podcast, I think are really important to companies that want to synchronize better, want to be aligned with the goals, and want to be reporting and recording their progress regularly, and want to basically accelerate the growth of their business by all being on the same page, so to speak. So the first meeting, which not every one of my clients does, is the daily huddle. And I was introduced to the daily huddle through the Gazelles and Scaling Up communities. I think it was part of the first Mastering the Rockefeller Habits book, which was written by Verne Harnish. The daily huddle is a 5 to 15 minute stand-up or Zoom or free conference call type of a huddle, where it's a quick go around done in round robin style at typically an odd time of the day. And typically it is in the morning, because we're going over updates that each person has to share that'll be relevant to that day's work. And so the start time might be 7:07 a.m. or 8:07 a.m. And that's what I mean by an odd time. And the purpose of these calls is quick team building, motivational, information sharing, very quick problem solving, and maybe some appreciation. And so by team building, we're trying to create a sense of alignment and accountability around where everyone's going to be that day and what they're going to be doing, without going over your calendar and reciting that. By motivational, it might begin the day on a positive note by communicating a core purpose or core value or an ideology or something you ran across that was exciting. By team building also, you might share the rotation of the leadership of this particular meeting so it doesn't feel stale by the same person running it. But it shouldn't rotate just for the purpose of rotating. The person who really does the best job at running these meetings ought to continue doing that job for a while until someone else can step up and do a really good job. Now, they're also informational. It's a time for team members to share knowledge or news that's important relative to the team, relative maybe to that day or that. It's really not a time to problem solve, but if it's an immediate challenge that can get an immediate resolution. But if this starts turning into longer than a 15-minute meeting, you need to take it offline or take it to the weekly meeting, which I'm going to talk about next. And finally, it might be a recognition or an appreciation of some team members who did something really outstanding the day before or that week. So the agenda is maybe something like this, and each company will do it differently. And I'll typically help a company customize this. But the first round, and I say round meaning round robin, is what's up. Maybe share some good news with the team or reflect on things in your work or life, or maybe share one thing you're grateful for today, or maybe share the specific activities or meetings or accomplishments from yesterday, or any meaningful metrics that occurred the day prior, as well as maybe what you'll be working on today. Now, this has to be done fast. If there's a team of 10 people, if you spend more than a minute and a half talking in total on 3 rounds of what I'm going to teach you in a moment, it's going too long. So this has got to be done in 15 to 30 seconds. To do that effectively, you have to think ahead and be prepared with what it is that you want to communicate. So I recommend a Post-it note or a 3x5 card, or maybe something you put on your phone, which is, what is it that I need to share that will be relevant to other people in the group? This is not a chance to boast or to be peacock-like with your ego. This is a chance and an opportunity to help others be filled in on what's going on that may affect them. Round 2. What's your top priority? Share your top priority that must get done before the end of today. This gives you a chance to, or forces you rather, maybe to focus the night before or the morning of, what is it that is my top priority that I want to get done this day, that I'm going to communicate to the group, and I'm going to sort of expect them to hold me accountable, so that tomorrow I'm not saying the same thing and repeating that the following day. And then the third round robin is, and this might go really fast or slow, meaning some people might have an issue, some might not, but where are you stuck? Are there any obstacles or challenges that require an immediate resolution? And so that's a good chance to go around and just say, anyone have any stucks, and communicate what those stucks are. Okay, so now let's move on to the weekly meeting. And the weekly meeting is something that ought to take 60 to 90 minutes. It ought to have all team members, or maybe just the leadership team, that each department should probably have its own weekly meeting. So if you're in a landscaping business, for instance, you might have a maintenance meeting, you might have an admin meeting, you might have a commercial or a residential team meeting. So that's what I mean by division. That probably is simple enough. Take a look at, in other companies, you might have a sales meeting, you might have a customer service meeting, you might have an operations meeting or a warehouse meeting or a distribution, whatever the key groups are in your company. All those teams ought to be meeting at different times and recording those meetings, maybe through the type of software that I have recommended and has been on my show as a sponsor many times. It's a great place to run the weekly meeting and to keep track of how you're doing on your priorities, how you're doing against your metrics, and to discuss and solve problems. So this meeting should happen at the same time and the same location each week. And again, you're here to review progress on quarterly priorities and then tap the collective brain power of the entire group. So it's really important to stay focused. You need to keep the company moving forward on accomplishing the quarterly company priorities. And the facilitator or leader of this meeting needs to make sure that everyone is communicating their priorities, or what we call rocks in the business, that they're communicating them and have identified milestones that they've met, showing progress towards their rocks. So let's think of a rock as something that think of it as a 13-week priority. Maybe it's a project, however you like to call it. And think of it as having maybe 13 milestones. So each week you're moving the rock forward. It's a chance to get feedback weekly. Also a chance to share feedback that you're hearing out in the field from clients or customers, or in the office from employees. Think about these as opportunities to improve the way people experience doing business with you, so business is more frictionless with customers. And think about this as an opportunity to improve the employee experience so that you're taking the hassles away from employees and making their jobs easier and better. These meetings are most important for identifying, discussing, solving issues. So decision-making, brainstorming, troubleshooting, making decisions on one or two key issues, opportunities, challenges, and quarterly rocks. Each week, you should be focusing on 1, 2, or 3 of these key issues, opportunities, challenges, or rocks to discuss so that you can advance the company in the direction that you'd like. So very simply put, 5 minutes is maybe a segue, a check-in, good news, professional and personal good news, connect with the team, maybe give some appreciation to others. Then we would maybe do 5 or 10 minutes on company quarterly priorities. So we would review the quarterly priorities, those rocks, and go one by one down with a focus on the company rocks. Those are the major priorities for the entire company for that quarter. And then focus next on people's individual rocks. But you need to move this fast, because in the next 5 minutes or that remaining 10 minutes, you want to go over the scorecard. This is where you're looking at KPIs, or key performance indicators, otherwise called metrics, and you're looking for a pattern. Hey, we're not meeting this metric, or hey, this doesn't seem to be a good metric. So this is a good chance to identify this as a time to make an issue out of it and discuss it down in the next section of the meeting. So the remainder or most of the meeting is going to be looking at a few topics, like I said, to review, discuss, brainstorm, and decide on next steps to move it forward. Of course, you're going to have a to-do list, or what we call a who, what, and when review, reviewing the action items of who committed to do what by when. Typically, these are 1 week long type of commitments, and you want to see how did people do against their to-do list. You always want to be getting things done that can be moved forward, and you want to break them down into concrete, actionable commitments that the group will hold you accountable to. And then finally, we conclude the meeting with either a one-word phrase or a close or a rating from 1 to 10. What's really popular is EOS coined the term level 10. People then call it the L10 meeting. And the whole goal of that is to be able to rate the meetings individually and get them to a score of 10 across the board. Very often I work with clients and they're nowhere near those scores. Better companies that have better meetings, those scores are higher, and they continue to progress higher as the meeting is run better. Now, the next meeting you might have, and it's really just the same, I think, as the weekly meeting, but it's a monthly meeting. And this is only applicable if you have a larger company and you've got mid-level and senior leadership, and it's a larger group, and you need to spend more time. And in this particular meeting, you're spending a lot more time doing education, maybe training on a specific leadership or technical skill. Team members can be used to present topics based on their personal expertise. Maybe it's a topic that is relevant to the entire company. It might be a report by a department leader or a division presentation. So these are pretty much like the weekly meeting. They're for decision-making, but they're also for culture development, education, and again, alignment and accountability around the goals of moving the company forward. And we're going to talk about the quarterly and annual meetings. For me in my practice, the annual meeting is either 2 or 3 days, and the quarterly meetings are either 1 or 2 days. And so that's fairly typical. So a new client, I'll be doing 6 full day sessions with them in the first year, or maybe 9 full day sessions with them in the first year. And the purpose of these sessions is to get outside of the business, typically offsite or away from the distractions of the business, and to start to do some strategic thinking and execution planning. And so we use a tool called the one-page business plan. And the purpose of this tool is to really put our vision down on a piece of paper and to answer several simple questions around our dream, which is simply put, who, what, when, where, how, why, and the always difficult, should we or shouldn't we? So there are 4 important decisions, essentially the bottom line of the document. And that's getting the right people in the business that are aligned with your values and your purpose, and of course your vision. Is 2, establishing a long-term goal. It might be a 10-year, it might be a 15-year target. You might use the term that Jim Collins coined, the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal. So it's get everyone aligned around the long-term goal. Is to clarify the marketing strategy, like what are your brand promises, maybe your unique selling proposition, any kind of guarantees that gets people excited and making the decision to choose your company versus your competitors. And then set clear short-term targets, some longer, for 3-year, 1 year, and 90 days out. And so the 2 overarching ideas of this document is to create alignment and simplicity. So the one-page planning document is designed to encourage simplicity. There's not enough space to write, so you must be concise and focused. And alignment. Think of the form as a crossword puzzle where figuratively 4 down on this one-page document needs to align with 7 across. So if you get your plan right, everything else falls into place and it's more manageable, and you'll likely dominate your industry. Maybe have 3 to 5 times industry average profitability, have abundant cash to grow, and will increase revenues at twice the industry average. Also, customers and employees will be attracted to your business. So the purpose of these sessions is to basically, in the annual session, is to complete these one-page, sometimes falling onto 2 pages, so that you've got really clear mission, vision, values, maybe 3, 5-year, 10-year targets, priorities, etc. Come up with your way of doing business, if you have it, like a defined process, like the HPA way. And these, some people might refer to their values as principles, guidelines, or operating behaviors. This is where we come up with the term rocks, or maybe we come up with, use the term priorities. But we're trying to fill out this document and create alignment. And what I do is take my clients through a series of exercises that help them build the company vision. So I might have them read an article from the Harvard Business Review, or I might have them fill out the lifeboat exercise. And I might have them watch some videos on how to start with your why and choosing your why. I might go over targeting, meaning coming up with smart targets when setting goals so that they're specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound, and they can be achieved fast. So the purpose of these sessions are always to recalibrate. How did we do in the prior quarter? What are we going to do differently in this quarter? Is there an overarching theme or a singular focus that's going to address the number one challenge, issue, opportunity, bottleneck, constraint, etc., that's going to move the company forward? This is all about changing behaviors and about choosing consciously the behavior and the actions and the results, and trying to predetermine what the results are going to be before you get there. So in the first few meetings where I do, let's call it a launch day, and then maybe a couple of vision building days, we're filling out this particular one-page plan in those vision building days. But on the launch day, we're actually doing some other activities that help us to define what the organization looks like. And so we'll spend quite a bit of time developing the organization chart, making sure that we've got a good structure, that we have the right people, and that they're sitting in the right seats, and that they understand the role and the roles that are to be played in that particular seat. We'll get a chance to see if multiple people are sitting in the same seat or if people are sitting in multiple seats. So we'll have an idea of, as we scale, what positions need to be replaced. We'll also attach KPIs to that box so that people will know that the person who sits in this box is responsible for these metrics. We'll talk about the vital few and trivial many, otherwise sometimes referred to as an elevate by EOS or love and loathe by scaling up. We will talk about what is it that you love and you're great at, so that this is the area that you can spend most of your time in, and the area that you like and you're good at. These two areas are your zones of genius and zones of high competence. And we want you operating out of these highly competable areas and zones of genius. That way you're loving what you're doing. You're coming back every single day with a renewed sense of purpose, and you're helping your teammates do the same, so that everyone is elevating themselves, focusing on their 20% of activities that gives that particular position, the company, the department, the greatest results. So these are some foundational tools. It's really important to understand what leadership development and the path to leadership development looks like. So I personally spend quite a bit of time talking about leadership development, also talking about what a company's core competency is. And we'll spend some time developing and talking about the marketing strategy and plan that's going to move the company forward. And then we'll actually spend quite a bit of time in the quarterly meetings after we set our goals, after we review our progress, is working through the issues that seem to be difficult to solve. This is where a good amount of time needs to be spent, and it's really productive time. And then once you've got those issues solved, then working on higher level strategic things. One thing that I invariably spend quite a bit of time with in a client during its first year is making sure that the team is healthy and that we have the right people on the team. So working through team dynamics, using things like Pat Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of the Team, which is probably the most popular book and tool or set of tools for team building and building healthy team dynamics. So we'll do some work around emotional intelligence. Maybe we'll include DISC or some type of a behavioral assessment so people get to understand other people's strengths and limitations. I'll typically do some team effectiveness exercises. And so all in all, we're trying to build a healthier team that's aligned around a very clear vision and that they're capturing their goals and recording their progress up towards those goals. And then as we build that rhythm and get very successful at it, we can start to ask deeper, more challenging strategic questions around marketing, around the brand, around the development of your brand identity. And so these are some of the important things. I'd love to hear your questions as well as your comments or feedback, or if someone has a unique and alternative process they would like to share, I'd certainly be interested in hearing about that and sharing it with our listeners. So I want to thank you again for listening to another solo episode of the Disruptive Successor Show. I hope these are useful. I want to point out to you that you will be able to go to the website disruptivesuccessor.com or go to my book on my Goldhill group, the Goldhill group website, and download free tools that not only address how to fill out the one-page plan, but also download a copy of our one-page plan. So I hope you got some value from this call, and I look forward to seeing you on future episodes with other guests. Take care. Bye now. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.